My family took me to the cemetery and left me there. It wasn't carelessness. It wasn't confusion. It was a choice. They walked too fast for people saying goodbye, no hand reaching back, no lingering glance. No one asked if I needed to sit, breathe, stay a little longer. I was there like an inconvenient burden, something that needed to be handled quickly so the rest of the day could keep going. I felt it before I understood it, that strange certainty that I wasn't part of that ritual. The casket went down. The words were said. Everything looked too organized, too clean. And while everyone performed grief, something inside me screamed that this wasn't a farewell. It was a rushed conclusion, a script followed to the letter. When I looked around, I realized they avoided my eyes the way people avoid a witness. Conversations stopped when I got close. The decisions had already been made. And none of them included me. There, among flowers and silence, I had an intuition so clear it felt physical. It wasn't that person they were burying. It was something else, a bond, the place I held in that family. As everyone started to walk away, I stayed behind for a few seconds, not out of respect for the dead, but because my body refused to follow something that made no sense. The cemetery gate shut with a dry click. Too final. Alone among graves, I understood something that changed everything. Some families don't bury people. They bury whoever gets in the way. If you've ever felt excluded without an explanation, ignored without a confrontation, erased in silence, stay with me. This story might sound like it's about death, but it's about survival. And before I continue, let me ask you something simple. If this story has touched something inside you, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and share it. Sometimes hearing another woman's story is what keeps someone from going silent one more time. And tell me in the comments honestly, have you ever felt like your own family tried to erase you in silence? After the casket was covered, no one came up to me. No questions, no offer of help. People formed small groups, speaking in low voices, like it was a social event that needed to wrap up quickly. I walked slowly among them and felt something unmistakable. My presence wasn't wanted. My brother Thomas avoided looking in my direction. He'd always done that when he wanted to shut something down without discussing it. He walked past me with his phone in hand, pretending to focus on something far away. My sister-in-law smiled at everyone, except me. A polite, rehearsed smile that didn't invite closeness. Whenever I got near a conversation, it stopped, not abruptly, coordinated, like there was a silent agreement about what shouldn't be said around me. I watched quietly. And the more I watched, the more I understood. No one asked if I was okay because that would require listening, and listening could slow down what they were trying to finish. I saw envelopes being passed discreetly, a quick comment about timing, a barely noticeable nod between two of them. Everything ran with too much efficiency for a moment that should have been messy and emotional. I felt displaced in a very specific way, not like someone grieving, but like someone shut out of the process. The pain wasn't the loss itself, it was the certainty that I was being kept on the edge of something important. At one point, I heard Thomas say under his breath, "It's better this way." Better how? The words echoed inside me. Better for who? Better why? That wasn't comfort. That was a decision, already made, shared only among them. There, among funeral wreaths and hurried footsteps, I understood something that took years to fully take shape. Exclusion is also a form of violence. It doesn't yell, it doesn't shove, it doesn't leave visible marks. It works with politeness, with silence, with speed. And the cruelest part is that when you try to explain what you feel, they tell you you're overreacting, too sensitive, that this isn't the time. But I could feel it in my body. That silence wasn't protection. It was strategy. As they organized to leave, I stood still, absorbing every detail. Because in that moment, something shifted inside me. I stopped trying to be included, and I started paying attention to what they didn't want me to notice. When I stepped closer to the grave, something inside me locked up. It wasn't emotion. It was a physical reaction. My stomach tightened before any thought could form. I read the name, read the dates, stepped back slightly and read them again, trying to understand why it didn't add up. The math didn't work. The dates were too close together. The gap between events felt compressed, forced, not impossible, but strange. Too strange for someone who knew that story from the inside. I knelt slowly, touching the cold edge of the headstone. The name was correct, the spelling too, but something about it felt rushed, as if they'd hurried to finish before anyone started asking questions. As I stood there, I felt eyes on my back, not curiosity, surveillance. When I turned my head, I saw Thomas a few yards away, pretending to talk on his phone. He didn't come closer. He didn't leave either. He just stayed there, too attentive to seem casual. I looked back at the headstone and tried to remember the last time I'd spoken to that person. The memory came back too clearly, too recently. A conversation cut short, not concluded. Nothing that matched a final goodbye. The discomfort grew, not like fear, but like internal rejection. My body was telling me that this narrative didn't fit all the way inside me, like trying to shut a door with something blocking it from the inside. I stood up slowly and looked around. No family nearby. No one interested in sharing that moment with me. It was as if the grave itself was a forbidden zone for questions. And I'd crossed an invisible line. That's when it became clear. This story hadn't been made to be examined. It had been made to be accepted quickly. And stories that demand immediate acceptance rarely survive careful observation. I stepped back a few paces, feeling the cold air hit my face. The image of the grave stayed behind, but the feeling didn't. It settled inside me with force. When the truth doesn't fit on the headstone, it starts pushing from within. And in that moment, standing in front of a grave that didn't match the story they were telling me, I understood I wasn't just dealing with grief. I was standing in front of an organized lie. I didn't yet know by whom or for what. But I knew one thing with absolute clarity. This wouldn't end. After stepping away from the grave, I tried to do what everyone expected of me, accept it and move on. I walked a few steps, took a deep breath, watched the movement around me. But the more I tried to fit into that flow, the more my mind refused to cooperate. Recent memories kept surfacing, not as nostalgia, but as contradiction. Nothing I remembered matched that perfectly organized ending. I recalled conversations left unfinished, open plans, commitments that were still standing. These weren't distant memories blurred by time. They were recent, too solid to be dismissed as emotional confusion. Around me, everything looked rehearsed. People knew exactly where to stand, when to speak, when to leave. There was no improvisation, no disorientation. It didn't feel like grief. It felt like the execution of a script. At one point, I heard someone mention lunch after the ceremony. The tone was practical, almost relieved. That cut deeper than the absence of tears. It was too soon for life to resume with such normality. I looked back toward the grave, the image still didn't settle. It felt like watching a play where the final act had been staged before its time. My body responded with a strange pressure in my chest, an insistence that didn't ask for emotion but for coherence. My family continued avoiding any deeper conversation with me. When I got close, topics shifted. When I stopped, they moved away. It was as if everyone was protecting something too fragile to be touched. That's when I realized it wasn't just the story that didn't add up. It was their behavior. When someone wants you to accept something too quickly, it's usually because that version can't withstand questions. And no one there seemed willing to answer any. That memory refusing to close wasn't weakness. It was a warning. I felt with uncomfortable clarity that accepting that narrative would mean giving up something bigger than an explanation. It would mean giving up myself, my perception, my ability to trust what I felt, and that I wasn't willing to do. There, still inside the cemetery, something shifted. I stopped trying to understand what had happened and started observing how everything was being managed. Because true stories can handle questions, false ones demand silence. And that silence was starting to speak far too loudly. It was when the ceremony was practically over that something small caught my attention. Too small to cause a scene, too big to ignore. A stack of papers was moving between them with unusual speed. No one was reading, no one was discussing. Pens were passed hand to hand, signatures appearing almost automatically. Everything was far too efficient for a moment that was supposedly heavy with emotion. I stepped a little closer, pretending to look at the flowers. I wanted to hear. I wanted to understand. But the sentences always came clipped, incomplete. It's all taken care of. The registry office has been notified. We'll deal with the rest later. Later. That word always shows up when someone doesn't want to explain anything now and hopes you'll forget. I asked simply what the papers were about. I didn't accuse anyone. I didn't raise my voice. I just asked. The effect was immediate. A silence spread that was too brief to feel natural. Thomas answered first. It's nothing you need to worry about right now. Not now. Not later either. I looked over his shoulder at the papers. I couldn't read everything, but I recognized the format. I recognized the kind of document. I'd seen those forms before in other family situations, always tied to decisions I only found out about after they were already final. Someone folded a page too quickly and slid it into a bag. Another person said quietly that it was better to get everything done while we can. That sentence lodged itself in my mind. Get ahead of what? Before whom? A tight feeling grew in my chest. It wasn't paranoia, it was logic. Bureaucratic processes are usually slow, full of steps, full of confirmations. This was moving too fast, too clean, like the moment had been rehearsed. I asked to see the documents. I got a polite smile, the kind that shuts down a conversation without sounding rude. We'll explain it to you calmly later. Later, that never came. I stepped back a few paces and watched from a distance. And that's when something organized itself inside me with uncomfortable clarity. They weren't just dealing with a burial. They were closing something, ending something, without me. When paperwork moves fast, the truth limps behind. And that day, the papers were moving far too fast. I didn't confront anyone, not yet. It wasn't time. Confrontation alerts, questions exposed, and I needed, first and foremost, to understand the scope of what was happening. But one thing became clear in that moment. It wasn't just silence that was excluding me. It was urgency. And people who rush important decisions are usually afraid of the ones who might still ask questions. It wasn't anything they said, it was the way they started acting. After the moment with the paperwork, my presence began to be treated like a problem that needed managing. People moved in small groups, always leaving a calculated space between me and them. When I approached, someone stepped in to change the subject. When I stayed still, they drifted away. I stopped being family. I became a risk. Thomas took on a posture I knew well. He spoke little, decided a lot, always in a neutral tone, always with short sentences, like someone shutting things down before they could grow. My sister-in-law stayed beside him, agreeing in silence, reinforcing everything with small gestures of approval. It was an old choreography. Only now it was impossible not to see it. At one point, I asked a simple question, nothing provocative, just something anyone would have the right to know. The effect was immediate. The atmosphere shifted. A brief silence formed, followed by quick looks exchanged between them. "Why are you asking that now?" someone said. There was no curiosity in the question. There was alarm. That's when something fully inverted. I was no longer someone who needed care. I was someone who needed to be contained. My questions started being treated as exaggeration, as confusion, as inconvenience. I heard someone say, too quietly to be accidental, "She's confused." Confused, the perfect word to discredit without confronting. I felt a tightness in my chest, but I didn't back down. It wasn't fear, it was recognition. When an entire group starts questioning someone's sanity, it's usually because that person is getting too close to something they're not supposed to see. I began noticing silent alliances, a look seeking confirmation, a barely perceptible nod. They didn't need to argue, they were already aligned. And I was out. It hurt, but it also brought clarity. This wasn't emotional rejection, it was strategy. They were united not by affection, but by mutual protection, protecting a decision, an agreement, a story that couldn't be reopened. In that moment, I stopped trying to explain myself, stopped asking to be included, stopped looking for validation. Something inside me shifted. I understood that if I wanted to move forward, it wouldn't be by trying to get back into that group. It would be by watching from the outside, in silence, with attention, because someone who's been underestimated for too long learns quickly how to wait. And I had just learned. By the time I realized it, everyone was already leaving. There was no warning, no invitation. They simply walked away, as if that ending also included my presence there. They moved together, speaking quietly, picking up conversations that had nothing to do with death. The contrast was too cruel to miss. I stayed a few steps behind, waiting for someone to notice. They don't miss things like that by accident. They notice and choose not to respond. The sound of car doors closing echoed through the nearly empty parking lot, dry, final, the kind of sound that doesn't ask for an answer. I stopped near the gate, watching as they organized themselves on the other side. Thomas got into the car without looking back. My sister-in-law adjusted her bag on her lap and pulled away. No one slowed down. No one waved. Life went on beyond the gate, without me. The cemetery gate closed slowly, creaking as if it wanted to mark that moment. Not because I was physically trapped, but because something had been decided without my participation. I stood alone among graves and silence. Cold wind stirred dry leaves at my feet. No goodbye, no explanation, just the unmistakable confirmation that I was no longer part of that group. There, in a place meant to bury bodies, I understood they weren't doing that to me. They were burying the bond. Some families don't bury people. They bury relationships. They bury histories. They bury whoever threatens the agreement. I took a deep breath, feeling the cold air fill my lungs. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't chase after anyone. Because in that moment, something settled firmly inside me. Anyone who leaves you behind in silence has already decided you don't belong in their future. And if I was going to move forward, it wouldn't be by trying to return to that group. It would be by understanding why they needed me to stay there, alone at the cemetery. I was already walking away when I heard my name. It wasn't called out loud. It was said with hesitation. I turned slowly and saw a woman standing near the cemetery's side entrance. She wasn't family. Simple clothes, professional posture, a restrained expression. An employee. The kind who sees many goodbyes and learns to recognize when something doesn't add up. She held a few papers in her hand, looked at me, then at the closed gate, as if needing to confirm we were truly alone. "You're an immediate family member, right?" she asked. I nodded. Something in her tone made me stop. She took a breath before continuing. "I'm sorry to ask, but do you know why the burial was done with such urgency?" Urgency. The word hit me like a short shock. "What do you mean?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. She hesitated, looked around once more, then lowered her voice. Normally, in cases like this, there's a longer time frame, especially when the documentation isn't fully finalized yet. My body reacted before my mind. A quick chill ran down my spine. "What documentation?" I asked. She pressed her lips together for a second, like someone weighing risk. "I can't go into details," she said. "I just found it strange. Everything was rushed. They asked for priority, insisted quite a bit." Insisted. That word clicked perfectly into everything I'd seen that day. The rush, the papers moving fast, the clipped answers, my family's coordinated silence. "Does that happen often?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not like that." We stood there in silence for a few seconds. Cold wind moved through the trees. The cemetery felt like it was listening. Before leaving, she said something almost in a whisper, like she was unloading a weight. Sometimes the truth leaks out through the cracks, even when someone tries very hard to seal them. I thanked her. She looked relieved, turned and walked away without looking back. I stood there, feeling something new take shape inside me. It wasn't just intuition anymore. It wasn't only a physical sense. Someone from the outside had noticed the misalignment. Someone without emotional ties, without any reason to protect my family. If the burial had been rushed, if the paperwork wasn't complete, then this wasn't just emotional theater. It was a poorly closed process, and poorly closed processes leave traces. As I walked toward my car, urgency organized itself clearly inside me. I needed to check dates, times, records. I needed to understand why everything had to end so quickly. Because when death is real, it waits. When it doesn't, it's usually because someone has a lot to lose. In that moment, I knew for certain what they tried to bury that day was still breathing. And now, it wasn't just me who knew. After that conversation, I couldn't leave the cemetery right away. My body wouldn't let me. I got into the car, closed the door, but didn't start the engine. I sat there with my hands resting on the steering wheel, staring at the still closed gate. Something inside me was moving too fast to ignore. It wasn't fear, it was urgency. The word rushed echoed in my head, along with incomplete documentation. None of that matched the clean story they'd handed me. The more I thought about it, the more that day's haste began to make sense in the wrong way. I picked up my phone and went through old messages, times, call logs. The notice of death had come too early, before any formal confirmation, before any explanation that made sense. I'd never questioned it. Until now. I started doing simple math, travel time, burial schedule, gaps that couldn't be closed without shortcuts. My stomach tightened. I got out of the car and walked a few steps back toward the cemetery entrance. Not to confront anyone, not to make a scene. Just to look again, with different eyes. The administrative area was far too quiet, too clean, as if everything had already been officially wrapped up, too quickly. I remembered my family's whispered conversations, the way they'd kept me away from any technical detail. That wasn't just emotional exclusion, it was information control, and information control usually protects something very specific. The thought formed without asking permission. What if that death hadn't happened the way they said it did? My body reacted before my mind fully accepted it. An intense cold in my hands, a pure alert sensation. This wasn't runaway imagination. It was coherence. Real death leaves clear traces. That story left gaps, confusing records, adjusted timelines, collective urgency. When death doesn't convince, the body notices first. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay grounded. I didn't have proof, not yet, but I had something just as important, a physical certainty that the story was incomplete. If someone was still breathing, someone had a lot to lose. I got back into the car and this time started the engine. As I pulled out of the parking lot, something fixed itself inside me with unsettling firmness. I couldn't wait for the truth to organize itself. If I stayed still, someone would close the remaining gaps. In that moment, I understood the real question was no longer what had happened. It was why everything had to end so fast. And once that question exists, there's no going back. I didn't know where this would lead, but I knew one thing with absolute clarity. What they tried to bury that day wasn't ready to stay silent. On the drive back home, something old began to reorganize itself inside me. Not as a single memory, as a pattern. I thought about how many times, over the years, important decisions had been made without me present. There was always a reasonable explanation. Lack of time, urgency, bureaucracy. I only found out later when everything was already done. That day, those memories stopped being uncomfortable and started making sense. As soon as I got home, I didn't even take off my coat. I went straight to the cabinet where I kept old documents. I wasn't nervous, I was focused. I opened folders I hadn't touched in years. Contracts, deeds, copies of family agreements. I spread everything across the living room table. That's when the pattern showed itself with unsettling clarity. My name appeared less than it should have. In major decisions, I showed up only as a secondary reference. In others, I didn't appear at all. Missing signatures, incomplete copies, dates that didn't match meetings I remembered clearly attending. It wasn't carelessness, it was repetition. I sat down slowly and began comparing older papers with more recent ones. The same kind of language, the same justifications, the same rush to close matters before they became complicated. And I was always the complication. I remembered phrases delivered as if meant to spare my feelings. This is better this way. You don't need to worry about that. We handled it for you. Handled never meant fair. It meant convenient. That funeral had been rushed because something needed to be closed, with no room for questions. Grief had served as the perfect curtain, and I, as always, had been positioned far from the center of decisions. I closed one of the folders carefully and felt something settle inside me. It wasn't anger, it was cold clarity. This hadn't started that day. The cemetery had only been the final stage of a long-standing pattern, a pattern of financial exclusion disguised as family protection. Money is rarely the main problem. It's the motive that exposes all the others. In that moment, I understood that if I wanted to get to the bottom of this story, I had to follow that path exactly. Not through emotions, not through versions, but through the records no one thought I needed to see. Because feelings can be denied, memories can be questioned, but documents tell stories that are very hard to bury. The next morning, I went back to the documents with a different posture, not to look for something new, but to confirm what was already too clear to ignore. I spread the papers across the table again, this time more calmly. I compared older versions to recent ones. I looked at names, dates, signatures, and it was in that quiet cross-checking that I noticed what had once seemed like mere absence. There was a document that had always existed. And now, it didn't. It wasn't torn. It wasn't lost. It simply wasn't there. It was an essential record, the kind that finalizes major decisions. A paper that required my signature, and yet the process had moved forward without it. My heart sped up, not from shock, but from confirmation. I picked up the phone and made a short call, not to anyone in the family, to someone with absolutely no reason to lie to me. I kept my tone neutral, asked objective questions, no accusations. The answer came clean, almost bureaucratic. That procedure couldn't have been completed without your formal authorization. Without my authorization. The phrase echoed inside me for a few seconds. I thanked them, hung up, and stood there, feeling the real weight of what that meant. This was no longer a feeling, no longer intuition. It was fact. They had moved forward without me, not by mistake, by choice. Everything began to fall into place with brutal clarity. The rushed documentation, the coordinated silence, the collective effort to keep me away. This wasn't emotional disorganization. It was engineering. And I had been removed from the story deliberately. I felt a tightness in my chest, but I didn't cry. Tears come when there's still hope for explanation. I didn't need explanations anymore. I needed strategy. I separated the documents carefully and organized them, not as keepsakes, but as records. Every page now carried weight. Every absence spoke louder than any justification. I didn't confront anyone, not yet. Confrontation alerts people. Alerts generate versions. And versions are dangerous when someone is trying to sustain a collective lie. In that moment, something definitive shifted inside me. It wasn't anger, it was repositioning. I stopped being the woman trying to understand what her family had done. I became the woman who knew exactly how they had done it. And when that shift happens, everything changes place. The missing piece was right there, and with it, an inescapable certainty. I hadn't just been excluded from that funeral. I had been deliberately erased from the decision. But people who underestimate someone for too long forget one simple thing. When the truth finally organizes itself, it no longer asks permission to appear. When I finished organizing everything, there was no shock. There was silence. A heavy, dense silence that didn't demand an immediate reaction. I sat alone in the living room, the documents sorted into clear stacks, feeling something difficult to name. It wasn't ordinary sadness. It was the cold understanding of something that had been done for a long time, with method and patience. This had never been about a farewell, never about grief. It was about erasure. They had tried to bury me symbolically along with that story. Not my body, but my voice, my place, my right to exist inside my own family. The cemetery had only been the final stage of something that had been happening for years, far from me, behind my back. Everything made sense now. The rush, the incomplete paperwork, the coordinated looks, the rehearsed silence. They weren't just saying goodbye to someone. They were saying goodbye to me, to my presence, my opinion, my ability to question. And they did it in the cleanest way possible. No fights, no confrontation, no space for defense. I felt a knot in my throat, but I didn't cry. Tears come when there's still doubt. I had none. What I felt was something harder. The pain of realizing that my place had been taken away long before that day. I remembered how many times throughout my life I'd been labeled dramatic, too sensitive, too difficult. That hadn't been random. It had been preparation. Slow, repeated erosion, so that when the decisive moment came, no one would question my silence. Killing someone's voice is an old strategy. It works best when it looks normal. For a few minutes, I felt the weight of it all crash over me. The realization that I'd defended bonds that no longer existed, that I'd been loyal to people who were quietly managing me as a problem to be solved. But alongside that pain came something unexpected. Absolute clarity. They'd bet I would accept it, that I'd be confused enough to give up, that I'd choose silence to avoid destroying the family. As that had always been the plan. What they hadn't planned for was what happens when someone finally sees the entire design. I took a deep breath and aligned the papers carefully. Not out of tenderness, out of decision. This was no longer just my emotional story. It was a set of organized facts, and facts change weight when they leave silence. I understood with unsettling calm that I didn't need to confront anyone yet. Confrontation feeds versions. Versions feed excuses. Excuses
What I needed
feed
now
new lies.
was
Time. Time to observe, time to record, time to let them believe everything had worked. Because anyone who's been underestimated for too long learns something essential. Waiting is also action. While my family believed everything had been closed at that cemetery, I knew, with a certainty both devastating and solid, that nothing was over. What had been buried there wasn't a person. It was a lie. And lies like that don't stay buried when someone finally decides to stand fully inside their own story. In that moment, without announcement or drama, I stopped being the woman trying to understand what had happened. I became the woman who knew exactly what to do with the truth. And that changes everything that comes next. I didn't confront my family. Not then, not afterward. I did something more effective. I took everything outside, not to a courtroom, not to a public fight, but to a space where stories don't survive just by the strength of who tells them. A place where documents are examined, versions are compared, and silence doesn't work as an argument. I handed over only what was necessary. No more, no less. Just enough for someone on the outside to start asking questions that had never been asked within the family. And the questions began, at first, politely, technical, almost neutral, then with real concern, a deadline that didn't add up. A procedure completed without valid authorization, a missing signature where one should never be absent. None of it depended on emotion. It depended on logic. Before long, what had been treated as resolved started demanding explanations. And explanations require people to show up, meetings, confirmations, formal justifications. My family was called in to speak. That's when everything started to fall apart. The versions didn't match. One said it was urgent, another said it was consensus. A third claimed ignorance. Stories that once felt solid began contradicting each other in public, in front of people who had no interest whatsoever in protecting family ties. I watched it all in silence, not with pleasure, with attention. Because when a lie has to be repeated too many times, it starts to wear thin, and when each person repeats it differently, that wear turns into rupture. At one point, someone asked the question that had never been spoken out loud. Why wasn't she included? The silence that followed was different from all the others. It wasn't control, it was lack of an answer. That silence no longer pushed me out. It placed me at the center. Decisions began to be reviewed, processes suspended, records reopened. What had been treated as final returned to pending status. And all of this happened without me raising my voice a single time. There was no public humiliation. There was consequence. My family realized too late that the mistake hadn't been excluding me from the funeral. The mistake was believing I would stay excluded once the story changed environments. Because secrets only work in controlled spaces. Outside of them, they don't survive. When everything wrapped up that day, no one came to talk to me. There was no apology, no justification. Silence returned, but not as a weapon, as residue. I walked out of that building with a strange sensation in my body. It wasn't victory. It wasn't revenge, it was alignment. My story was finally in the right place. What they tried to close at that cemetery had just been reopened. And this time, there was no way to remove me from the room. The days that followed weren't dramatic, they were quiet. And that silence was different from any I'd known before. It wasn't the kind used to erase me. It was a silence that no longer needed defense. Decisions had been reviewed, processes reopened. And no one pretended nothing had happened anymore. The house grew quieter too, not from a lack of sound, but from a lack of tension. I moved through the rooms without that constant feeling of being watched, measured, evaluated. For the first time in a long while, the space seemed to fit me. Some family members tried to reach out, short messages, overly careful phrases. There were no apologies, no accusations either. It felt like everyone was relearning how to see me outside the role they'd created. I answered little, politely, without opening anything back up. Not out of revenge, out of preservation. I started organizing simple things, filing papers, letting go of objects that no longer made sense, making physical space while sorting the internal, small gestures that had always been postponed because someone else needed to agree. Now, I didn't need permission. There was one ordinary morning when I noticed something meaningful. Hours had passed without me thinking about the cemetery, without replaying the scene, without reconstructing conversations. It wasn't forgetting, it was integration. The story had found its proper place inside me. People on the outside, those who had seen the facts without emotional ties, kept handling the practical consequences, adjustments, corrections, procedures redone. I followed it all with attention, but without anxiety. What needed to happen was happening, and interestingly, the more things resolved outside the family, the less room there was for versions inside it. The perfect narrative lost its strength, not because anyone attacked it directly, but because it no longer held. During that time, I understood something with calm clarity. The deepest kind of justice rarely arrives with applause. It arrives as normal life, as the right to exist without explanation, as the freedom to take up space without apology, as the relief of no longer needing to prove anything. I didn't gain a new family. I gained something better: autonomy. The autonomy to choose where to stay, who to talk to, what to accept, and most importantly, what I would never negotiate again. The silence after the truth wasn't empty. It was rest. And in that rest, I began rebuilding something that had been interrupted for years. My own life, at my pace, without an audience. A few weeks later, I went back to the cemetery. Alone, not to relive anything, to close it. I walked slowly to the same spot where I'd stood that day while my family drove away without looking back. The gate was open, the space was quiet. There was no rush now, no script to follow. I brought just one thing with me, a simple copy of a document, not the original, not the one that caused everything, but the one that symbolized what they tried to take from me. I stopped in front of the grave and looked at the headstone for a few seconds. That place no longer tightened my chest. There was no confusion, no doubt, just enough distance to see clearly. I folded the paper carefully, not out of respect for what was written there, but out of respect for myself. Right there, I tore it in two, then into four, until there was nothing left that could be read. I dropped the pieces into the cemetery trash, not into the ground, not onto that grave, because that never belonged to me. I took a deep breath and felt something release inside me. Not explosive joy, alignment. Like the body finally understanding it no longer needs to defend itself. That day I understood something final. Who they tried to bury there wasn't me. It was the perfect image of the family, the story built in silence, the lie that needed a burial to keep going. I walked out of the cemetery with steady steps, feeling the cold wind on my face. The gate stayed behind me, and for the first time it didn't symbolize exclusion. It symbolized a boundary. I didn't return to that family the way I was before, and I didn't need to. I moved forward with fewer people around me, yes, but with more space inside. Some losses don't impoverish you, they free you. They give back what was taken little by little, your own voice. If this story found you in a moment of silence, exclusion, or injustice within your own family, I want to tell you something simple, without ready-made phrases. You don't have to disappear to keep the peace. You don't have to stay silent to belong. Sometimes walking out alive from a place that erases you is the greatest act of self-love there is. If this story spoke to you, stay here. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Stories like this don't change the past, but they help recover who you are. And if you want, tell me in the comments, what did you have to leave behind to stay alive? Because when one of us finds the courage to step out of silence, others realize they can too, and that no one can bury.